Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
Chiefs win. Cry, Eagles, cry.
Great, excited to be back in the league.
You know, every day I got the Three Stooges in the studio with me is a good fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
So let's make sure he gets that bag.
Frauds! Woo!
Justin's way ahead in picks. That's all that you need to fucking know.
Show's over.
Show's over. We're going home. I would like to welcome you back to another page of the Playbook Sports Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to 32 NFL off-seasons in 32 days. Yesterday, we talked about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Today, day number 16, we are talking about the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. I'd like to start off by congratulating the Chiefs and the Chiefs fans on another Super Bowl victory in which they proved that once again that regardless of how absolutely stacked the roster on the other side of the field is, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in your corner, you have the advantage. It's what I said when we made our picks. One of those teams, the Philadelphia Eagles have a fantastic roster, but what they don't have is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that's enough. That's the difference, and it was the difference in my opinion. Before I start grading their offseason moves and the draft, I will once again want to make it clear this is not a grade of them as a team. This is not a grade of their roster. I am simply looking at the moves that have been made this offseason and the players that were acquired and the players that were lost. That's it. What I think about each move, not the team. So just want to get that out there before starting. Let's look at what they've done this offseason to shore up their roster before they launch another title defense. Key additions. I like the quiet addition of Charles Omenihu at defensive end. He had a sneaky, decent season last year with 4.5 sacks. He's only 25 years old, has great size for the position at 6'5", 280. And the Chiefs were set to pay Frank Clark $30 million this year before cutting him. And Clark only had 5 sacks last season. Omenihu had a half a sack less than him, is 5 years younger, and is going to be making $8.6 million against the cap instead of 30. That's a young, cheap option that produced at the same level as Frank Clark last year. No offense to Frank Clark. But I think that's a sneaky good addition. I really like that one. And then I also like the low-key addition of Drew Tranquill and Drew Tranquill, the linebacker, to pair with Nick Bolton. I wrote something else in there. It was weird. However, the big free agent ad by the Chiefs that I'm going to spend some time talking about here is one that kind of hit me as a surprise when it was announced. You get the notification on your phone, Kansas City Chiefs land offensive lineman, and you start thinking, oh, Orlando Brown resigned. No. They brought in Juwan Taylor, 6'5", 315-pound right tackle from the Jaguars. I emphasize right tackle. Juwan Taylor was all right last year for the Jags. He was all right. PFF graded him out at a 58.7 on a scale of 0 to 100, which is just slightly above average. I know that they had their issues with Orlando Brown Jr. wanting to be a left tackle, which, by the way, the Chiefs need, especially when I talk about another one of their additions later here. But they didn't want to pay Orlando Brown Jr. like a left tackle. Instead, they gave that money to Juwan Taylor. They gave him more money. They gave Juwan Taylor 4 years, $80 million. That really confuses me by every single offensive metric possible. All of the statistics, Orlando Brown Jr. was better. But they didn't want to pay him left tackle money. They wanted to pay Juwan Taylor left tackle money because Juwan Taylor got $13 million more than Orlando Brown Jr. got. And if the Chiefs say, oh, we're going to play Juwan Taylor at left tackle, why would you not just keep Orlando Brown Jr. and play him at left tackle? This move has bothered me all offseason. I don't understand it. And it's not my job to understand it. Brett Veach obviously knows what he's doing, right? But this is perplexing. This move has really just bothered me. Taylor, it's not even like Taylor is a younger replacement. He is technically by a whole year. He'll turn 26 this November, and Orlando Brown Jr. just turned 27. So it's a year. And like I said, I think Juwan Taylor is a solid tackle, but I would have given that money to Orlando Brown Jr. because both of your tackles are gone, and you want to keep at least one of them, right? But no, they let him go, and they brought in Juwan Taylor, and then they also added Donovan Smith. If you followed football at all last year, you'll know that Donovan Smith is very bad. A lot of penalties. I think most penalties in the league. It seems like every time Brady dropped back, he was getting beat or he was holding. Not a good addition, and he is probably going to line up to start at left tackle first week for the Chiefs. Not pretty. So that kind of leads me into the key losses. You heard everything I had to say about Orlando Brown Jr., who I think is significantly better than Juwan Taylor, who's not bad, But Brown Jr. was a 76 on PFF versus a 58. That's a significant jump. And then to watch Orlando Brown Jr. go sign with your direct competition in the AFC right now in the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this is a rare miss by Brett Veach, who has been a fantastic GM for them, has built this team up, and is doing great things over there. Big fan of what he has done. But then they also let Andrew Wiley walk in free agency, which means that both their tackles, their bookends on their offensive line, from a team that they were a dominant unit last year, they're both gone. Both tackles are gone. So there goes the continuity in the tackle position, which is the most important. Yes, they still have the interior together in Humphrey, Tooney, and Trey Smith. But that hurts to lose both your tackles when you could have paid. Andrew Wiley got, 3 years, $22 million? So if you combine what him and Orlando Brown Jr. got together from other teams, it's just a little more than what they paid Juwan Taylor in total contract money. That blows me away. I digress on that. But I don't like that they let Andrew Wiley walk, because when you look at the last 2 Super Bowls the Chiefs played in, what was the difference? The offensive line. Patrick Mahomes scrambled for something absurd, like 500 yards overall, like running around the field. 500 yards in the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. And then was untouched by the Eagles' ferocious pass rush in this past Super Bowl, and they dropped 38 on them. So there's the difference right there. It just makes me nervous, man. I don't love that. I wish that they would have kept at least one of them. And then another key loss of theirs for this offseason, Eric Bieniemy going and taking the same job but with Washington. I think Bieniemy was wanting out because he's sick of everybody saying you're only good because of where you are, and Bieniemy's like, watch me go be good somewhere else. It's going to be an interesting season for both Bieniemy and the Chiefs, because this will be the first time we see Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator outside of the Chiefs and without Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, because Bieniemy took over in 2018 when Patrick Mahomes took over. Now, if Bieniemy goes and does well in Washington, then he can prove that he can do it without Mahomes. But I am worried that the Chiefs are losing their offensive coordinator that's been there for this whole run. But I do know, like I said earlier, they have Andy Reid, who is a complete difference maker, in my opinion. So I don't think the Chiefs will hurt too badly, but I think it's a loss when you lose a good coach. And then they did also lose Juan Thornhill, who has 2 Super Bowl titles with them, was drafted by them, and he was definitely a leader in the secondary. Some tough pills for the Chiefs to swallow this offseason, as they've lost some guys. And then obviously they let Juju Smith-Schuster walk, but I don't really count him because he kind of stunk and he got a lot of money, which was surprising. So, but how did the Chiefs fill those holes? They had some draft picks and the draft was in their backyard, and I didn't love their draft, man. I didn't love it. I'm sorry. I didn't love it at all. Felix Anudike-Uzomah at 31 was solid value, and they, if Charles Omenihu doesn't continue on an upward trajectory, at least they have somebody to groom at defensive end, to teach the position, and he could be solid for them as they go. Honestly, as an NFL fan and an AFC team fan, as a Dolphins fan, I'm really glad that Zay Flowers didn't somehow fall to them, because that would have been devastating. I talked about that in my prospects video. If Zay Flowers went to the Chiefs, it was over. He was going to be one of the best receivers in the league in no time, and we were all screwed. I did like their pick of Rashee Rice in the second round. I really think this year he'll play a decent-sized role in that offense. He'll probably be, third receiver behind obviously Travis Kelce, but in the depth chart behind MVS and Kadarius Toney. So Rashee Rice was solid. But outside of that, I didn't like a lot of the value that they had in this draft. I really didn't. When you're picking last in every single round, it's kind of tough, but I give them a C- for their draft, and that might seem harsh, but I just didn't like the value there. I didn't see anything that made me go, oh, what a pick by the Chiefs. So I'm going to be a little tough on them, and they're the Super Bowl champions, so I have to harshly critique them as much as I can, because when I do my roster grade, you'll see that they're pretty high. C- for the draft. But this has definitely been an off season for the Chiefs that we should probably get used to seeing. Nothing too major happening, just replenishing some things while letting some of the pricier players walk. But at the end of the day, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, as long as they have Andy Reid, they're going to be just fine. That being said, this is about grading just the offseason. And overall, I see a team that's gotten worse. I feel like I've gotten more and more negative about this as I've gone on, but I really hate the Taylor for Orlando Brown Jr. swap. I hate that. Brown Jr. was so solid for them, locked down that side of the offensive line. It was awesome. And they paid Juwan Taylor more money, and he's not as good. I don't understand that. Maybe the relationship between Orlando Brown Jr. and them had broken, and I just don't know it, which is very possible. There's a lot I'm sure I don't know, especially behind doors stuff. But I just don't love that move. A lot of their offseason just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. They didn't really try. They didn't really improve. They definitely took a step back with the overall talent on their roster. So overall offseason trade or draft factored in, I give them a overall C. And do we really have to talk about what kind of team this is, guys? 5 straight AFC title games, 3 Super Bowl appearances. I mean, they're forming another dynasty right before our eyes. Brady left, Mahomes stepped in. You honestly can't bet against them in any game that they play in because they can beat anybody. Yes, it's the NFL. Anybody can beat anybody. But honestly, like betting against the Chiefs is a mistake. You should never do it. They're going to lose. But way more often than not, they're going to win because they have the advantage. And when you have the best coach and the best quarterback on any field on any given Sunday, you're going to win. That'll be enough. So that's what I've got for you guys on the Kansas City Chiefs offseason. That'll make 16. We're halfway home on this series of grading all the offseasons. Also, want to shout out our new sponsor, SeatGeek. Use promo code PlaybookSports for your first purchase and save yourself $20 if you want to go to a sporting event. But that's all I got, guys. I will see you all tomorrow for day 17.